I brought pastries to my sister's house, a small token of celebration. Instead, I stood on the porch and listened to her, my brother-in-law, and my nephew call me a fool while plotting to steal $15,000 from me. So I went to my lawyer, changed the locks, and waited for the show to begin. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air on the back porch was cool for a Tuesday morning, but I barely felt it. I was frozen, not by the breeze, but by the voices floating through the slightly open kitchen window. My hand, clutching the white paper box from La Rêve Patisserie, had begun to tremble. Inside the box were 4 perfect, almond-crusted croissants, my nephew Jordan's favorite. I had bought them to celebrate his supposed acceptance into a prestigious summer coding boot camp. "Just make sure you look miserable enough," my brother-in-law Howard was saying. His voice was a low, confident rumble. Not too miserable, just stressed, overwhelmed. Sabrina loves to be the hero. She's a lonely, sentimental fool, and she can't stand to see her baby sister upset. A brittle laugh from my sister, Janice. "Oh, I know the look. I'll just wring my hands a bit, tell her we're so worried about Jordan's future, how this is his one big chance." "And Jordan," Howard continued, his voice hardening. "When she asks you about it, you look at your feet. You act humble. You say, 'I don't know if I can even go, Aunt Sabrina. It's just too much money.' Lay it on thick. 15 grand is a lot to ask for in one go, even from her." $15,000. The number hung in the air, sharp and heavy as an axe. My stomach clenched so violently I nearly doubled over. This wasn't a request for help. This was a script, a performance, a scam. I had come here out of love. I had parked my car down the street so I wouldn't wake them, wanting to leave the pastries as a sweet morning surprise. I was proud of Jordan. I was, as always, ready to support Janice, who never seemed to be able to get her life in order. I'd spent 54 years being the reliable one, the strong one, the person who fixed things. I ran a successful bookstore, the Gilded Page, which I had built from nothing. I'd used the inheritance from our parents not on myself, but to buy the very house they were sitting in, the old family home, so Janice, Howard, and Jordan would always have a roof over their heads, rent-free. I had done this, telling myself it was what a good sister, a good aunt, would do. "She won't even question it," Janice said, her voice dripping with a casual disdain that cut me deeper than a knife. "She'll just write the check. She always does. Honestly, it's like taking candy from a baby. A sad 54-year-old baby who runs a failing bookshop." Failing, the Gilded Page had its best quarter in 5 years. They didn't know that. They didn't know anything about me. They only knew what they could take. "Just make sure she doesn't try to pay the boot camp directly," Howard warned. "I need the cash transferred to our account. The bookie is done waiting." A bookie, not a boot camp. It was a gambling debt. My legs felt weak, and I leaned against the porch railing. The smell of almonds and butter, so delightful just moments ago, now made me want to be sick. They weren't just ungrateful. They were contemptuous. They saw my kindness, my generosity, my love as weakness, as a flaw to be exploited. I looked down at the box in my hand. La Rêve Patisserie, the dream, what a bitter joke. Slowly, silently, I placed the white box on the weathered wooden railing. I didn't knock. I didn't cry out. I didn't storm in and demand an explanation. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me, like a sheet of ice forming over a turbulent lake. The grief was there, a crushing weight in my chest, but something else was rising alongside it. A cold, hard clarity I hadn't felt in years. They thought I was a fool. They had mistaken my kindness for stupidity. They had forgotten who, exactly, had been holding their world together for the last 2 decades. I turned around and walked back down the porch steps, my footsteps silent on the stone path. I got into my car and drove away. They were right about one thing: I had been a fool. But as I pulled into traffic, a single, clear thought echoed in my mind. The betrayal was absolute, but the mistake was all theirs. I drove for an hour aimlessly, the city blurring past my windows. I ended up at a small park overlooking the river, a place I hadn't visited in years. I just sat in my car, the engine off, the silence ringing in my ears. The initial shock had subsided, leaving behind the dull, heavy ache of a deep bruise. Every word I had overheard played on a loop in my mind. Sentimental fool. Lonely. Failing bookshop. Like tack. Ing candy from a baby. This was my sister, the little girl I had taught to ride a bike. The woman I had held as she cried over high school breakups and later the stress of becoming a new mother. I had co-signed for their first car. I had paid for Jordan's braces. I had given them a home. And in return, they mocked me behind my back and plotted to steal from me to pay off a gambling debt. My phone buzzed in my purse. I looked at the screen. It was Janice. I stared at her name, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm. I let it ring, and ring, and ring, until it finally went to voicemail. A few seconds later, a text message popped up. Janice, hey Sabs, just woke up. Did you stop by? There's a box of pastries on the porch. You are an angel. Call me when you get a chance. We have some amazing news about Jordan. The casual manipulation of it, the breezy, loving tone, was vile. It was the performance starting. I was the audience, and I was supposed to be charmed by the angel comment, my heart swelling with pride, readying my checkbook. I felt a surge of pure, cold anger. I typed back a single, simple reply, busy at the shop, can't talk. I needed to think, not as a sister, not as an aunt, but as a business owner. As the person who held all the cards. For 2 decades, I had played the role of the loving matriarch, the soft-hearted benefactor. That person was gone. She had evaporated on that back porch, leaving behind someone far more pragmatic. They thought my shop was failing. They thought I was lonely. They saw me as a caricature, a stereotype of a single, childless woman who lived for her relatives. They had no idea that the Gilded Page was thriving, that I had a vast network of friends and business contacts, or that my lonely life was, in fact, rich and full. They didn't see me because they didn't want to. They only saw a resource. I started the car. The fog of grief was clearing, replaced by a sharp, icy resolve. They had a plan. Now so did I. As I drove toward my bookstore, a line from a book I'd read last week came to me, a thought that settled deep in my bones. They forgot who I was. They saw the quiet, accommodating woman who brought pastries. They had forgotten the woman who had built a business from scratch in a competitive market. They had forgotten the woman who negotiated with publishers, managed payroll, and stared down bank managers to get her first loan. They had, quite simply, forgotten who held the deed to their house. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jordan. Jordan, thanks for the croissants, Aunt Sabrina. They're amazing. Mom and Dad are really excited to tell you my news. I didn't reply. I pulled up to my beautiful bookstore, the gold lettering of the Gilded Page gleaming in the morning sun. I unlocked the door, the bell chiming softly. The smell of old paper and new ink, my favorite scent in the world, enveloped me. This was my territory. This was my strength. I went to my office in the back, sat at my heavy oak desk, and pulled out a file from the bottom drawer. It was thick, labeled family home. Inside, on top, was the deed. My name, Sabrina Wallace, was printed in clear, unequivocal black ink. Underneath, it was the rental agreement I had drawn up 20 years ago and never enforced. An agreement that specified a token rent of $1 a year, but also stipulated that I retained full ownership and could terminate their tenancy with 30 days' notice. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Janice. I called my lawyer. David, I said, my voice perfectly calm. It's Sabrina Wallace. I need to schedule an appointment for this afternoon. I'm preparing to evict a tenant. Yes, from the old house on Maple Drive. And I'll need you to draft a formal notice immediately. There was a pause. Sabrina, are you all right? David asked. I've never been better, I replied, and the surprising thing was I meant it. They've forgotten one crucial thing, David. They forgot who owns the house. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand Janice. She's 5 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, my primary role in her life has been that of a safety net. When our parents passed away far too young, I was 25 and she was 20. I was just finishing my business degree and she was drifting. I was the one who managed the estate, paid the bills, and held her while she cried. I was the one who, faced with selling our childhood home, couldn't bear to let it go. I used my portion of the inheritance, the money I had planned to use as a down payment for my bookstore, to buy out her share, giving her a significant cash payout. My plan was to rent the house out, but then she met Howard. Howard was, and is, a man who oozes a kind of slick, unearned confidence. When I first met him, he was wearing a suit that was just a little too shiny, and he spent the entire dinner talking about market disruption and leveraging assets. He had a vague, important-sounding job in consulting that never seemed to result in a stable paycheck. He saw me not as a person, but as a potential investor. He saw Janice as an easy mark and our family home as a jackpot. They got married quickly. Then Jordan came along. Janice, who had never held a job for more than 6 months, was now a full-time mother. Howard's consulting career hit a temporary downturn that somehow became permanent. They were drowning in debt. "Sabs, please," Janice had wept to me one night, Jordan just a baby in her arms. "We're going to be on the street. Howard's trying so hard, but it's just bad luck. Please, can we just stay in the house for a few months? Just until we get on our feet." That was 20 years ago. A few months turned into 2 decades. I never charged them rent. I paid the property taxes. I paid for the new roof, the new water heater, the plumbing repairs. I did it because she was my sister. I did it because Jordan was my nephew and he deserved a stable home. I did it because, deep down, I still saw her as that lost 20-year-old who needed her big sister. Howard, over the years, never missed an opportunity to make a dig at my expense. He called my bookstore your little hobby. When I'd mention a new author event, he'd ask, "People still read books?" He'd make pointed comments about my empty nest, conveniently ignoring that his own nest was entirely funded by me. He treated my generosity as an obligation, my kindness as a salary he was owed for gracing our family with his presence. Janice, meanwhile, perfected her role as the charming, slightly scatterbrained victim of circumstance. She was always so overwhelmed, always so grateful. Her gratitude, I now realized, was a currency. She paid me in, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Sabs," and in return, I paid for her entire life. I had built my life on hard work and independence. The Gilded Page was a pillar of the community. I had employees who depended on me, a reputation for integrity. Meanwhile, Janice and Howard had built their life on a foundation of my goodwill, and they had come to despise me for it. My very existence was a reminder of their failure, so they'd twisted the narrative in their heads. I wasn't generous, I was a lonely fool. I wasn't successful, I was running a little hobby. They needed to believe I was pathetic to justify their own parasitic existence. And Jordan, I had loved Jordan. I'd taken him to museums, bought him his first grown-up novel, listened to his dreams of becoming a game designer. But as I sat in my lawyer's office, I had to face the cold truth. The 19-year-old boy I adored was an active participant. He was in that kitchen. He was part of the rehearsal. He was going to look me in the eye, lie about a boot camp, and take my money, knowing it was to pay a bookie. "So, this is a standard 30-day notice to quit," David said, sliding the document across his desk. "It's ironclad. The house is solely in your name, the original agreement is clear. They have no legal standing whatsoever." "Good," I said, my voice firm. "Sabrina, I have to ask, what happened? You've let them live there for 20 years. I looked at David, a man who had handled my business contracts for a decade. "They called me a fool, David. They're planning to scam me out of $15,000. The difference is, they think they're scamming me. In reality, they're just evicting themselves." I signed the papers, took my copy, and then made another call. This one was to a private investigator. Howard had a bookie. I wanted to know who, where, and how much. If I was going to dismantle their lives, I was going to do it with precision. They thought this was a game. I was about to teach them what it meant to play against someone who was actually in charge. The shift from passive benefactor to active strategist was instantaneous. The grief didn't vanish, but I compartmentalized it. I packed it away in a cold, dark box in my mind to be dealt with later. Right now, I had work to do. My first call, after my lawyer, was to Greg, the private investigator. He was a discreet, no-nonsense man I'd been referred to by a colleague who'd had an issue with a thieving employee. "Greg, it's Sabrina Wallace," I said, back in the sanctuary of my office. "I have a delicate situation. I need information on my brother-in-law, Howard." "What kind of information?" His voice was gravelly, all business. "Financial, specifically gambling debts. I have reason to believe he owes a significant amount of money, around $15,000 to a bookie, and that the deadline for payment is imminent." "Got it," Greg said. "Name, address, and any known associates. I'll get started. It's usually not hard to find a man who's drowning. They splash a lot." I gave him the details. The day trader profession, his bank, which I knew from having to bail them out on a mortgage payment years ago, before I finally juice. T paid the house off entirely, the car he drove. "This should be quick," Greg said. "I'll be in touch." The second part of my plan was the house itself. I had the eviction notice, but just serving it felt incomplete. It didn't match the level of their deception. I wanted them to walk into their own trap. I wanted them to perform their entire, well-rehearsed play before I brought the curtain down. So I waited. I went to work at the shop, ordering new inventory, helping customers, running my life. All the while, my phone was a ticking clock. Janice texted me 3 more times. "Janice, hope everything is okay. You're never this busy." "Janice, Jordan is getting so nervous. He really wants to tell you the good news in person." "Janice, can we please come by the shop tomorrow around 4? It's really important, please." Please, the word she used as a key to my vault. I replied, 4 p.m. tomorrow is fine. The trap was set. They would come, brimming with false hope and rehearsed lies, ready to fleece the sentimental fool. They would walk into my territory, my place of power, and I would be waiting. The next morning, Greg called. "You were right on the money," he said. "Literally, your brother-in-law is in deep. He's been losing big on college sports trying to cover his day trading losses. He owes just shy of $16,000 to a local operator, and imminent is the word. His deadline is this Friday. From what my source says, the guy he owes isn't the patient type. Howard's scared. He's desperate." "Thank you, Greg. That's exactly what I needed to know." "One more thing," Greg added. "The kid, Jordan, he's in on it. He's been the one placing some of the bets online using his father's account. He's not just a pawn, he's an active player." That I had not expected. The cold box of grief in my mind cracked just a little. That hurt. Jordan wasn't just going along, he was a participant. The betrayal was deeper, darker. It solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about Janice and Howard. This was about severing a limb that had become hopelessly diseased. My plan needed a small, precise adjustment. I had intended to wait until after their performance to serve the eviction notice. But the thought of them living in my house, sleeping in my beds, for another 30 days after this, it felt unbearable. I called David, my lawyer, again. "David, a change of plans. I need that eviction notice and I need a locksmith." "A locksmith?" "Yes, I am the sole owner. There is no lease. They are tenants at will. What is the bare minimum legal notice I have to give them before I can change the locks?" "Given the lack of a formal, paid lease," David said, "and the fact that you can prove they are actively attempting to defraud you, you could argue they have broken the tenancy agreement, flimsy as it is. But the safest route is a 30-day notice. However, if you give them the notice and they become hostile, you can file for a temporary restraining order, which would remove them immediately. But that requires a confrontation." I thought about it. The confrontation was coming anyway. But I didn't want to give them 30 days to damage the property. "Let's stick with the notice for now," I said. "But I'm also going to have a property inspector go through the house tomorrow while they are at my shop. I want a full report on the condition, time-stamped, to protect myself." "Smart," David said. "Very smart." I hung up and made the call. The inspector was set. At 4 p.m., while they were spinning their lies in my office, an inspector would be cataloging the state of my house. I looked at the clock. 3:50 p.m., 10 minutes to showtime. I went to the small safe in my office and took out the eviction notice. I also took out the thick file labeled Family Home. I spread the key documents on my desk: the deed, the original unenforced rental agreement, and the new official eviction notice. I sat down, my hands perfectly steady, and waited. At 4:02 p.m., the bell above the shop door chimed. My assistant, Chloe, buzzed me on the intercom. "Sabrina, your sister and her family are here." "Send them back, Chloe," I said, my voice even. I heard them before I saw them: Janice's light, tinkling laugh, Howard's throat clearing, Jordan's muttered responses. They walked into my office, and the performance began instantly. Janice rushed over and hugged me, a cloud of floral perfume. "Sabs, oh my goodness, we were so worried. You've been so quiet." She pulled back, her hands grasping mine, her eyes wide and glistening with manufactured tears. She had, I noted with a clinical detachment, put on her distraught mother face. "Sabrina," Howard said, nodding gravely. He stood by the door, arms crossed, attempting to look like a concerned patriarch rather than a desperate gambler. "Hi, Aunt Sabrina," Jordan mumbled, just as rehearsed, staring at a spot on my Persian rug. "Sit down," I said, motioning to the chairs opposite my desk. My voice sounded foreign to me, flat, calm, devoid of all warmth. They sat, a perfect tableau of a worried family. "So," Janice began, wringing her hands right on cue, "we have something to tell you. It's wonderful, but it's also—" She paused, taking a shaky breath. "Jordan, honey, you tell her." Jordan looked up, his eyes glassy. "I got in, Aunt Sabrina, into the summer coding boot camp. The Alpha Gen ESIS program, it's a really big deal." "Alpha Genesis," I repeated, my tone unreadable. "I've never heard of it." "Oh, it's very exclusive," Howard chimed in, leaning forward. "Top of the line. They only take a few dozen kids from across the country. It's a direct pipeline to companies like Google, Apple, you name it, this is it. This is his one big chance." "I see," I said. "And how much is this one big chance?" Janice winced as if the number pained her. "That's the hard part, Sabs. It's $15,000, and it's due by this Friday." "15,000, I said, letting the number hang in the air. "That's a lot of money." "We know," Janice burst into tears, exactly as scripted. "We just don't have it. Howard's commissions have been slow, and we're just so terrified he's going to lose this spot. He's worked so hard." I looked at Jordan. "Is that true, Jordan? Did you work hard for this?" He nodded, still looking at the floor. "Yes, Aunt Sabrina." The lie was so blatant, so poorly executed, it was almost insulting. I was silent for a long moment. I watched them, Janice dabbing at her dry eyes, Howard trying to look stoic, Jordan the picture of false humility. "Well," I said finally, my voice as cold as steel, "you're right about one thing, it's a lot of money." I reached for the papers on my desk. Janice's face lit up, a flicker of triumph she couldn't quite hide. She thought I was reaching for my checkbook. Instead, I picked up the single sheet of paper on top. I slid it across the desk. "What's this?" Janice asked, her smile faltering. Howard leaned over to look. His face went from confident to confused to, finally, a blotchy, terrified red. "That," I said, "is a 30-day eviction notice." Janice's mouth fell open. "What, Sabs this? This is a joke, right? A mean joke." "Read it," I said. Howard snatched the paper. His eyes scanned it, his breathing growing shallow and fast. You can't, this is our home." "No," I corrected, my voice precise and unwavering. "It's my house. A house you have lived in rent-free for 20 years. A house you have taken for granted. A house you sat in yesterday morning while eating pastries I bought for you, and plotted to scam me out of $15,000. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Janice's sharp, sudden intake of breath. Her face had gone chalk white. Jordan looked up, his eyes wide with genuine terror. "You called me a lonely, sentimental fool," I continued, my gaze locking on Janice. "You said I was running a failing bookshop. You, Howard, said I was like taking candy from a baby. And you, Jordan, you were supposed to look at your feet and act humble. You played your part beautifully, by the way." Janice started to hyperventilate. You heard. Oh my God, Sabrina, no, we didn't mean it. It was just, Howard was just. Shut up, Janice, Howard exploded, jumping to his feet. He threw the eviction notice at me. "You spied on us, you twisted our words, you're a bitter, lonely old woman, just like I said." "Yes," I said calmly, not flinching. "I am a woman who is bitter. Bitter that the family I supported, the sister I raised, and the nephew I adored would turn on me so viciously. But I am not lonely. And I am certainly not a fool. The fool in this room is the man who thinks he can pay off a bookie with my money." That hit him like a physical blow, his face crumpled. How? "I had a chat with a private investigator," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Greg sends his regards. He says you're in deep, Howard. 16,000 actually. And the deadline is Friday. It seems my 15,000 wouldn't have even covered it. And Jordan, Greg says you've been placing the bets yourself. I'm so glad to see you're putting those coding skills to good use." Jordan let out a small, strangled sob and put his head in his hands. Janice was now weeping hysterically, real, desperate tears. "Sabrina, please, you can't do this. We'll be on the street. It was Howard. It was all his idea. He's a gambler. He's ruined us." "You co-signed the performance, Janice," I said, my voice empty of sympathy. "You sat there and laughed. You have 30 days to vacate my property. As of this moment, a property inspector is walking through the house to document its condition. If so much as a light bulb is broken, I will sue you for damages." 30 days, Howard roared. "We'll fight this, we have rights." "No," I said, picking up the second document. "You don't. This is the deed. My name. This is the original agreement you signed. My terms. You are tenants at will, and your will is no longer welcome. Now I have a business to run. Get out of my store." They just stared at me, their world collapsing around them. The rehearsed confidence was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly panic of people who had just lost everything. The days that followed were a barrage of desperate, escalating tactics from Janice and Howard. They had left my office in a daze, Howard dragging Janice by the arm, Jordan trailing behind them like a ghost. But the shock quickly curdled into predictable patterns. First came the pleading. Janice left me 24 voicemails. They were a master class in emotional manipulation. She wept. She apologized. She begged. "Sabs, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. It's Howard, he's a sickness. But you can't punish Jordan for this. You can't punish me. I'm your sister. Our parents would be so ashamed of you." That last one, I admit, stung, but the ice in my veins held. I didn't respond to a single call or text. Then came the anger. Howard took over. He sent me long, rambling emails, half threatening and half pathetic. He threatened to sue me for emotional distress and unlawful eviction. He threatened to go to the press and tell everyone how the rich, heartless Sabrina Wallace threw her family onto the street. My lawyer, David, laughed when I forwarded him the emails. "Let him," David said. "He has no case, and you have a mountain of evidence. The Pies report on his gambling is all we need. Any judge would laugh him out of court." But Howard's threats gave me an idea. He wanted to talk about my reputation? Fine. I had spent 25 years building a reputation of integrity in this community. Howard had spent that same time building a reputation of, well, nothing. I made a few calls, not to anyone in the legal world, but to my network. I called the head of the local business association, a woman I'd served on a board with. I called a friend who ran the largest real estate agency in town. I didn't tell them the whole story. I didn't need to. I simply said, I'm selling the old family home on Maple. My sister and her husband, Howard, will be moving out. I'm just letting you know in case you hear any strange rumors. Howard has been making some poor financial decisions, and I'm afraid I can no longer support them. The polite society grapevine is faster than fiber optics. Within 48 hours, everyone in there and my social and business circle knew the score. They knew that Janice and Howard were no longer under my protection. The bank, which had been ignoring Howard's overdrawn accounts for years knowing I was the backstop, suddenly called in his line of credit. The country club they'd only been able to afford because they had no housing costs paused their membership, citing unpaid dues. The invisible credit I had provided them, my name, my stability, was gone. The true escalation, however, came from the man Howard actually owed money to, the bookie. Friday came and went, and Howard did not pay. I learned this from Greg, the pie, who was still keeping a discreet watch. The bookie's people paid your brother-in-law a visit, he reported. No one was hurt, but his car's windshield is gone. They left a very clear message. He's run out of time. The panic must have been suffocating, because on Saturday, I had an unexpected visitor at the bookstore. It was Jordan. He came in alone, looking pale and thin, his eyes red-rimmed. "Chloe," I said over the intercom, "I'll handle this." He stood in the doorway of my office, twisting the hem of his t-shirt. "Aunt Sabrina." "Jordan," I said, "I didn't ask him to sit." He swallowed hard. They're going crazy. Mom just cries all day and Dad, he's terrified. Some men came to the house. "I know," I said. He flinched. I wanted to. He took a deep, shuddering breath and the confession tumbled out. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I knew it was a lie. I didn't know about the bookie, not at first. But I knew the boot camp was fake. I've been placing bets for him. I wanted him to be proud of me for once. He said this was the only way to fix things." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, youthful shame. "You've always been so good to me. You bought me books. You talked to me. They always said you were just a lonely old maid. But I knew you weren't, and I went along with it anyway. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, this boy I had loved, and I saw the first genuine emotion I'd seen from any of them in weeks. He was weak. He was a follower. But he was, perhaps, not entirely lost. "I know you're sorry, Jordan," I said, my voice softer. "But sorry doesn't change what you did. You knew it was a scam. You participated." "I know," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Is there anything I can do to fix this?" I thought for a moment. "Fix? No, you can't fix this, but you can start to undo the damage to yourself." I pointed to the chair. "Sit." He sat, perching on the edge. "Your parents' life, as they know it, is over," I said bluntly. "I am not saving them. Howard will have to face the consequences of his actions. Your mother will have to get a job. But you are 19, you have a choice." I presented him with the irrefutable proof, Greg's report. I showed him the printouts of the betting sites, the dates, the amounts. I showed him the text message Greg had intercepted from Howard to his bookie, promising my money. Jordan stared at it, his face ashen. The full scope of his father's recklessness was laid bare. The spell was broken. "Here is my one and only offer, Jordan," I said. "You will leave that house. You will get a full-time job, any job. I don't care if it's washing dishes. You will enroll in community college for a real program. You will pay for your own books. If you do that, and only if you provide me with your transcripts and pay stubs, I will pay your tuition. Directly to the school. That is the only help you will ever receive from me again. Do you understand?" He nodded, wiping his face. Yes, Aunt Sabrina, thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for the boy I used to take to the museum. I'm hoping he's still in there. Now go, you have a lot of work to do." He stood up, looked at me one last time, and walked out of the store. The first crack in their toxic family unit had been made. The rest would now crumble. The 30 days were nearly up. The house was listed for sale, and the "for sale" sign on the front lawn was a daily, glaring reminder of their deadline. I had arranged for the final walkthrough with my realtor on the last day of the month, a Wednesday. I had also, through my lawyer, arranged for Janice and Howard to have movers retrieve their belongings during a strict, 4-hour window that same morning. I would not be there for that. But they couldn't let it go. They couldn't accept the consequences. On the Monday before the deadline, Janice showed up at the bookstore. It wasn't the pleading, hysterical Janice of the phone calls. This was a new, cold, and venomous Janice. She marched past Chloe, ignoring her protests, and burst into my office. "You can't do this," she hissed, slamming her hands on my desk. "It's already done, Janice," I said, not looking up from my ledger. "The house is in escrow. The new owners close in 2 weeks." "You sold it," her voice cracked. "You sold our home." "I sold my house," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "The one you were using as a hotel." "And what about us? What about your family?" she shrieked. "Howard is a wreck. We have nowhere to go. We're applying for apartments and no one will take us. They all want credit checks. You've ruined us." "No," I said, standing up. "Howard ruined you, and you stood by and let him as long as you could enjoy the benefits." "And Jordan," she spat. "You've turned our own son against us. He's moved out. He's living in some tiny, disgusting room above a restaurant. He works as a dishwasher. You did that." "He's working, Janice. He's paying his own rent. He's enrolled in classes. It's the most responsible thing he's ever done. You should be proud." "Proud?" she laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "You've destroyed us all because of a few stupid words. We were just venting. You were never supposed to hear it." "So the only crime was that I found out?" I asked. "The scam, the lies, the theft, all of that was fine as long as I remained your sentimental fool." Just then, the office door flew open again, and Howard stumbled in. He looked terrible. He hadn't shaved in days, his eyes were bloodshot, and he reeked of cheap whiskey. "There you are," he slurred, pointing a shaking finger at me. You did this, my guy. He's going to break my legs, Sabrina. You have to pay him. It's the least you can do. You owe us that." "I owe you?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I owe you." This was it, the final public showdown. Chloe was standing in the doorway, phone in hand, ready to call the police. A few customers were peering around the bookshelves, drawn by the shouting. "Yes," Howard roared, grabbing a stack of books from my desk and hurling them to the floor. "You owe us. For 20 years, we've had to live on your charity. We've had to beg you for scraps while you sit here in your successful little shop, judging us. You think you're so much better than us." "I don't think I'm better," I said, my voice rising, clear and strong, cutting through his drunken tirade. "I am better. I am a better businessperson, a better friend, and a better human being. I built this. You leeched. I gave you a home, and you used it as a base to plot against me." I walked around the desk, standing directly in front of them. Janice, for all her bluster, shrank back. Howard tried to puff himself up, but he was just a scared, desperate man. "You came here to ask me for $15,000, I announced, my voice ringing through the shop. "Money you said was for your son's education, but it was to pay off this man's gambling debts." The customers gasped. Chloe's eyes went wide. "It's a lie," Janice shrieked. "Is it?" I said. I held up the Pie's report. "Is it a lie that you owe $16,000 to a man who just smashed your windshield? Is it a lie that you've been losing money for years? Is it a lie that you called me a fool in my own home?" Howard lunged at me, grabbing for the papers. "Give me that." He never made it. Before I could even react, a young man stepped between us. It was Jordan. I hadn't even seen him come in. "Dad, stop," he yelled, shoving his father back. "Stop it. She's right. You're lying. You've been lying to everyone." Howard, shocked to be confronted by his own son, stumbled back. "Jordan, what are you doing? You're with her." "I'm with no one," Jordan said, his voice shaking but firm. He looked exhausted, but he also looked taller. "I'm done. You ruined everything. You and Mom. You lied to Aunt Sabrina, you lied to me. You told me this was to save the house, not to pay for your stupid bets." He turned to me, and his expression was one of finality. "They got a notice this morning, Aunt Sabrina, from the bank. They're seizing your car, Dad. The one I paid the down payment for," he said to me. "They're seizing it because the loan was tied to the house as collateral, a loan you took out against her generosity." This was news to me. They had taken a loan out against my house? No, they couldn't. But they had probably listed it as their primary asset, a lie that was now catching up to them. "Get out," Jordan said to his parents. "Just go, it's over." Howard looked at his son, at me, at the watching customers. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a pathetic, whimpering defeat. Janice was sobbing, a broken, ugly sound. "You'll regret this, Sabrina," she whispered. "You'll be all alone." "I'd rather be alone than in your company," I said. "Chloe, please call the police. I'd like to have these two people escorted from my property." Howard and Janice fled, pushing past the stunned onlookers. The final, triumphant moment wasn't mine. It was Jordan's. By standing up to his father, he had finally, decisively, broken free. And in doing so, he had handed me the most public, most satisfying vindication I could have ever imagined. The downfall of Janice and Howard was as swift as it was complete. The police arrived just as they were peeling out of the parking lot, and I filed a restraining order, citing Howard's physical aggression and threats. With the Pye's report and Chloe's testimony, it was granted immediately. They were legally barred from coming near me or my store. Their movers collected their things under police supervision. The house, which I had dreaded inspecting, was left in surprisingly good condition. They hadn't had time to damage it. They had been too busy panicking. The sale closed 2 weeks later. Without my financial backing, their world imploded. Howard's car was repossessed. The bookie, apparently deciding a man with no assets and a restraining order wasn't worth the trouble, stopped trying to collect, leaving Howard in a different kind of prison, one of terrible credit and a reputation so toxic he couldn't get a job. Janice, faced with the first real crisis of her life that I wasn't there to solve, had to get a job as a cashier at a grocery store. They moved into a tiny, run-down apartment complex by the highway, the kind of place they had always felt they were too good for. I heard from them only one more time, through a lawyer. They attempted to sue me for a portion of the proceeds from the house sale, claiming emotional investment and verbal promises. My lawyer, David, dispatched the claim in a single, scathing letter that included the Pye's report and copies of Howard's threatening emails. We never heard from them again. Jordan, however, was a different story. He kept his word. He worked double shifts at the restaurant, and his grades from his first semester at community college were excellent. He was studying database management. He would email me his pay stubs and his transcripts, and I would pay the tuition. There were no personal notes, just the facts. He was doing the work. About 6 months after the confrontation, he emailed me. "Aunt Sabrina, I've been saving. I have enough to pay for my next semester's tuition myself. I just wanted to say thank you for the chance." I wrote back, "I'm very proud of you, Jordan." With the proceeds from the house, I didn't go on a vacation or buy a new car. I did something I'd been dreaming of for years. I invested it back into the Gilded Page. I bought the empty retail space next door and began an expansion. We were adding a children's wing and a small community cafe. The story ends not with a bang, but with a quiet, peaceful afternoon. It was a year after that terrible day on the porch. I was sitting in the new, sunlit cafe of my expanded bookstore, a cup of tea in my hand, watching families read to their children in the new wing. My failing little hobby was now the largest independent bookstore in the city. I was not lonely. I was not a fool. I was surrounded by a community I had built, a business I had earned, and a life I was proud of. Janice and Howard had seen my kindness as a resource to be plundered. They never understood that my kindness was a choice. It was a gift, and a gift can be taken back. In their greed, they hadn't just lost a house. They had lost the one person who had ever truly cared about them. As for me, I had lost a burden I never knew I was carrying. I was, for the first time in my adult life, truly and completely free.